Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our weekly local area discovery session. This is session number 23, goodness. And today's date is Thursday, July 18th. We'll start off going over the project status updates, and then we will go into today's working session. Our session is light today, so we will likely end early, just to give you all a heads up. Al, would you like to go over the project updates?
Thanks, Taylor. You can hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, so we just got finished with Sprint 10 last week. Sprinting, of course, everybody knows that's the development cycle. There's other stuff that goes on in that cycle too, testing and some business requirement stuff, but mainly it's focused on development. And we are in Sprint 11 now. It started last Friday, the 12th. Up to this point, from a GMS perspective, we're talking about since production in February. From the IWDS to the rest of it perspective, we're talking about from day one. We've identified 470 stories. We have defined 384. In other words, those are all fleshed out. And then there are 296 developed. We also have requirement documentation in the pipeline that precedes the story development. So we have several requirement document sets from milestones. We're working on customer intake. We are working on applications and expanding the system to incorporate WIOA applications and all that. We have put trade adjustment on hold until that other stuff gets done. We are working on into management. We'll talk about a little bit of that today. We are working on federal report mapping the fields and the data and all that. And so there's a lot of discovery and requirement gathering and development of those requirements and documentation and review and that going on, which precedes the story development. So that is kind of where we're at. We have 2 week sprints, so we're just moving along through those. Okay. So we'll move into today's session. Okay. All right. So I want to talk a little bit today about just it's not finished, but what happens at the first part of that screening process and the last part of that screening process that you saw for EDPO. And then I'm going to show you the application actually and relationship management, which I don't think we had completed before, but it's close enough now that I can show you that because that's probably the last piece that we're going to have. We have some customer intake stuff in there too, prior to getting it out there into your AT environment, into your hands. And I think for sure, after the sprint we're in, there's a little bit of cleanup going on. We'll have this into your hands once we get that figured out we're going to get you into the environment. If the worst case is, we'll put you into our staging environment to get your hands in it. Otherwise, we'll get you set up and to do it side. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and pull up a couple different documents here. Let me see here. Should have had those up. Sorry, folks. This is by far not. It's a really early look. I know that we've got a lot of changes made to this, but it's just the concept is all it is. And let me find my sharing area. Looking up one screen, so bear with me here. This document. Okay, there's some notes up front, but if you remember in our screening process, obviously for obtaining, getting onto the ETPO, we're going and understanding and information about the ETPO, we are going to have a landing page. Okay, so this would be not, and it's not going to be like this exactly because this is too busy. And but the idea is you'll get to a landing page. We're trying to figure out what that page is. but whoever is trying to gain access or get information on EPPL in Illinois, they're going to find some kind of landing page that basically a who, what, when, where type of page. Somewhere on that page, we'll also have the ability to initiate a search, a training provider search, which will take us to results. Somewhere on that page, we're also going to have the ability to jump into the pre-screening process if they're not in that already, or if they have somewhere on that page, if they had access already created, there's going to be some kind of a login capability also. So just wanted to show you that. We're working through that. I'm getting some feedback on this. And when I get this more hammered out, I will definitely present it to all you folks, but that's the concept. Some kind of a way that we have a lot of resources. We have ability to link, other resources here to explain, the types of providers that would be on the EPPO, those kinds of things, the types of programs. Those will be links to that information. And then we're going to have some kind of a help and contact the state EPPL coordinator. Those kinds of issues are those kinds of resources we're going to have on this page. So it's going to be a resource-rich page about the EPPL. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone? This is what we call that landing page. So in those documents that I had out there, and those presentations of the pre-screening process, I refer to a page one or landing page. It'll be something in, where we can provide information and get you going into that pre-screening process. Okay. And then I'm going to branch over to another at the end of this page. Okay. So you're probably wondering, and I want to talk about this a little bit more about where, let me get to this real quick. Wait a second. Okay, back to share. All right. This is so if you remember in the pre-screening process, really, you really don't have an account and you're not logged in, even though in that pre-screening process, let me see if I can scoot over here to one of these pages where we start at, even though page two here, if you can see that, it does collect a contact email address. It's not providing them necessarily it's not providing them with an account to be able to go in and add their entity and their location, contacts, and all that kind of stuff, and actually define their program. It's just an identification that we can tie the information that we collect on the pre-screening process to the individual doing it. So what we will do here, though, is we'll validate this as a valid email address, and then we will email that address with a link to get back into this process. And actually, it'll get back into this process and move them on to here. And we'll do that just so we can make sure that we're not getting a bunch of garbage and spam and all those kinds, or not spam, but we might have a caption here somewhere too. We don't talk to that with folks. Yeah. So anyway, that I just want to remind you that we are capturing. We're trying to capture, an email address to tie to this information that we collect, and we're trying to do that in such a way that it's valid. We don't want a bunch of garbage in here. So when that gets completed, and I'll come over here to move out a little bit so I can find it. And you get through all that screening process positive. And then when I say positive, it means you've answered all the questions in a positive way. met the pre-screening requirements, and you're either an in-state, an out-of-state, or a distance education program entity, and you've answered all that, and you've gotten through it. It could be 1 or 2 screens, it could be 3, 4 screens, but then at that point, we bring you to something that's going to look a lot like this, okay? And there's an explanation of why, and we'll refine this language as soon as possible when I get this out in a document. But basically, then you're really signing up for an account, okay, at that point, and we'll pull in that email address, okay, into here. We'll have them confirm that, choose a password, and sign up. And this will actually integrate with our state of Illinois Do It Okta. And so I'm not exactly certain yet until we're working in the background with that, with some work on getting that Okta, which is the front door SSO single sign-on. We're getting that work through the technical requirements and all that right now. That's part of development team's work. And so whenever that gets confirmed and all that, I'll know more. I mean, if we can do this, or do we have to just put an information page and put a link on it to get that ID? I don't know how much of this we'll be able to put in here as far as this form, because it may be already just totally canned on the Okta side, on the state Do It side. So that's why I'm not really setting this in concrete or anything yet, because I don't exactly know technically how that's going to work out. At the least, we're going to have a page that says, okay, hey, you made it through and you're ready to get your account, and there'll be a link. Okay. Now we'll tie all the information we've collected, obviously, to that new account that they get, and then to the entity and the entity locations and all that. We'll be able to tie that in. If for some reason they get to this point and they decide, well, that's not really the email address I wanted to use, I didn't really realize that, that's okay too. We'll be able to switch that in the record and data that we had. We'll be able to keep that thread going, and we'll be able to switch that back. So that's what I wanted to show you a little bit today. That's that page 21. So that's where we go after. So page 1 would be that landing page. We have the screening process, and then you get through all the screening process, they'll get to page 21, which is not the 21st page, but that they had to do, but it just happens to be labeled as 21. So that's what I want to show you about that. Is there any questions about what I'm talking about here?
Hey, Al, could you explain how I'm thinking about all the work with providers, and how they can get super confused about literally everything.
Yep.
So, I mean, so IWDS, it's easy for us to forget that, because IWDS itself is its own thing, right? I think it's easy for us to forget that IWDS 2.0 is going to be enmeshed somehow or another in workNet. So,
Yes.
So how is this, like, is there color coding? Is there something that can be done so that a provider is going to, like, where is the integration part? Like, can they get from workNet? Because right now, if you go looking for any kind of information on training providers on workNet, it's not, I mean, if they don't know what they're looking for, they won't. So where is, like, the landing spot on workNet? Is it going to match the landing page?
Yes.
That gets
We're going to
into
match.
email?
Well, if you know now, it's kind of interesting because we have three different ones. We have the service finder, we have the ETPL or the ProPath, and we have the ETPL page too. We have like 3 different pages, right? And so the short answer is I don't have the perfect answer yet, but it is on our radar. We have to get this so that there's more continuity between all these 3. But we also want to make sure that all data is, whether it's just an IWDS 2.0 database, or it's, even if it's not, which I think it should be, but if it's not, then we got to make sure in the background that it's constantly kept up to date. Okay, we're to take the path that we can take, but that has not been designed yet from a technical perspective or a user interface perspective. And we're going to bring that, we'll definitely bring that by everybody. That is on our list to do yet. Okay. So I can assure you that we're going to get into a better position than we are, a much better position than we are today with that. Okay. But I don't have a design for that yet. Okay.
Okay.
I know that's a bad answer, but we haven't tackled it yet. We're trying to get some of this foundation stuff put together first.
Sure.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to show you though, I want to show you the app as it's matured a little bit since you've seen it last. And that's what I'm going to do next. I think I'm going to need to, I don't know, maybe I can, but you can tell me if I am still, everybody can tell me if I'm still showing, my browser here. Can you all see that?
Yeah, we can still see it.
Okay, cool.
Your
Super.
screen.
Super.
Yeah, even though you switch
right.
tabs, we can still see it.
Good. Excellent. I didn't know if I had my browser showing or what that was. Okay, so go back at any management, and I'm going to show you just something a little bit smaller here today, but it's nothing you haven't seen. Okay, if you remembered, okay, this is kind of our main menu still, it's still holding up. And here under the management tools, one of the things here so far, and this will grow, this menu is entity management, and that's what I hit to get to here. And then this filtering is on the left. If you remember, we have the different filters. In fact, since you've seen this, I believe we now have this nice program hierarchy with the funds and all that, and the different hierarchy. So that I think has been since you saw that before. And then over here, we've standardized some stuff here too. We're trying to get across. We've had some UI standardization across the board so that when we're in different places, we should be familiar. In other words, it doesn't look like we just jumped out of the application as we go through this. Okay, so we're trying to make sure everything keeps standard, which means buttons are a certain place, so you can expect them to be, that place. For example, there's a switch view button here, and that's also over here. So, stuff like that. And then here's your column selections, ability to add. You'll see a plus, which is the same. So we're trying to make sure we put out a style guide for all of us to adhere to, and we are continuing to make sure that we get our user interface styled in a sense the same. When I talk style, I mean look and feel, right? I mean, how does that work? But anyway, that's not why I brought you in here. I brought you in here to show you relationships because you haven't seen that. And let me just I'll just go to this one. Okay, I went to an entity. This is an entity. Okay, and it shows the locations and the contacts. And I'm going to go to this specific location. It has all these different quick links right here, so I can go straight to relationships.
Al,
like that. Yes.
we have a question here in the chat from Lisa. She's asking if this is the default page when you get on to 2.0.
This will not, entity management will not be the default page. There's also, we haven't just defined this home page. There'll be a home page here, and we haven't really defined that yet. I'm kind of waiting for Olivia to help us on that when she gets back here.
Okay.
But yeah, no, this is, I think right now it might default to that or something, but that is not even that's not even it. So, yep. Okay, this is just where we're at now. Okay, let me get back to where I was. Okay, and so this was the entity. I jumped into the location. Got some information about the location. If you remember, it's got the contact area, which I haven't made contacts for this specific location. I don't even have any. This is display only. And if you wanted to edit, you can go edit. But I do have relationships down here, and I wanted to show you this because this was not available before. I showed you like everything but this. Okay. So these are relationship IDs here. We have funding here, and you're gonna have some curious questions probably. We have start date and end date. Okay, so we have the ability to add a relationship. We'll take you through that. We have the ability to go to a relationship. Okay, and we're trying to get that same user interface action metaphor kind of the same every time, so you don't, so it's familiar. And what that means is, for example, you would go to a details page of something first. You would not be in edit mode. I'm going to go to this one here. Uh-oh, we may be in some trouble. I didn't tell the folks that we were doing this. Anyway, you would go to a page first, and then you would not be in edit mode unless you edited it. Let's see. Yeah, I can't do that. I should have told them I was going to do this today. That's my fault. And so let me just try one more time. And if I can't do that, oh, I got to it. Okay, here's one. Then you're in a managed relationship. And then you can go to the edit mode, which is our edit or add. Our edit and add, we actually made this configure relationship because we wanted to reuse the same interface for both adding a new one and editing one. Okay, so you'll see this. I'll take you through this edit here next, but you'll see this. So if I go here to relationships and I add a relationship, you'll see it looks very similar. Actually, it does say create. Anyway, so basically it has that entity name wherever you're at and the entity location name. And the first page, there's 3 pages. They get a little bit more complex down in here, of course, but the first page is very simple. You would just add whatever, if you wanted to, whatever relationship ID there is, and then you would have a relationship type. This doesn't obviously make sense, but we just got some bad data in there. I think this should be contract and referral and vendor or something like that, contract. And then we can save and get out, which would mean, oh, we're going to come back later and finish that out. And you would see it go back into that list. That's why that one you saw a minute ago had NA on the fund types. And you're probably like, why is it NA? Because you could actually create one just to this level and get out, or we can go on to next and it'll save it and go tell you it's saved and go to next. Okay. So here we've got the information we just added. We have the entity name, location still, and now we're at the funding. Okay. And we can add funding. You'll see a very similar program hierarchy for fund sources. Obviously, we're trying to pick up these fund sources. So if I say, you know what, I'm going to pick up, I could pick up one of these, 2 of these, or I can pick up all of these if I wanted to. I'll just do that for fun now. And then I could put in a start date. Let's put in a start date of the 1st, and let's put in 26. Okay. And then you can put in an optional contract amount there. I won't put any for now. Okay. So that comes back then. I just pulled back all these different funds, and each of these funds actually could keep the same. They have the same date because we use that wizard pop up, or you could change 1 or 2 of these dates to something completely different, because you can go back in here now on that one and just change that date and put a specific contract amount if you wanted to, just for that specific fund source. Okay. Or you could remove it right now because it's not tied to anything or associated to any services that we've done or anything else. Okay. So it pulled back all those automatically, and you can leave them in the same configuration mode with the dates and the contract amount, or you can make them more individual. Okay. So that's the feature there. Now we could also add more funding if we wanted to. Now we can go forward. Okay.
Al, Rory has his hand raised.
Yes. Rory?
Oh yeah, and I could have waited till you were done, but sorry, it's back. If you want to finish this and you can go back to it, it's back on the first, I think one of the first screens that you showed us where it had looked like it had a relationship number. It was there were rows.
Yeah, I'll go back to that. I'll go back to that, Rory. Let me put a pin in that and we'll go back to that. Okay.
Yeah, okay, and then just let me know when you're there. There was
Yep,
it was how they're listed, but definitely go ahead and finish since you
okay. Yeah. So let me go ahead. Yeah, and we'll get to that. Okay. So the next page now is adding service levels. It's a little bit more complex. Adding service level and services. Now, as you all know, we don't have perfect data in here yet, but as you all know, some service levels do not have services. Now, just for those of you who've been around for a while, you'll realize that today in IWDS, these are named programs and these are named activities. Okay. We're getting away from that nomenclature. We're going to service level and services on this fund source. So we have all the fund sources. We should have all the fund sources that we selected. Oh, I know what the problem is. There's just not enough data in here yet. I'm sorry about that, but we need more data in here in our database to get this to work, because you should have all of these, right, will be in this list. Okay. Now, what does it mean to show all versus not show all? When you come back into this later, after you've configured these, you may not want to see all the options anymore. So you can just pick that off and say, I just want to see the ones we've got configured. Obviously, I haven't configured anything. I'll show you what that looks like. But so let's pick this one for sure. We'll pick two of these. One that does not have services and one that does have. Okay, and this data could very well be totally wrong. So sorry about that. In this career services here for 1A, we have the ability to set some services in the service level. And if I hit that, I can go select what those are. Okay. I can get them all. All right. Or I can just pick, 2 or 3 of them. Okay. I save that. It tells me there's 3 set. We kind of run out of screen real estate, so to speak. So that's why you have to see those that way. Okay. And then you can see them and select, you can unselect, you can select more, and that'll change to tell you how many are selected and configured. Now you see that we have intensive services and career services for 1A selected. Now this could be a bunch of fund sources, but today that's all we have. And so if I do not show all, well, I'm sorry, I should have said first. That was stupid. Let me go back to that real quick. If I do not show all, it should eliminate that one. It's not doing it. It should eliminate that one, okay, because it's not selected, okay? Somebody's got their hand up, Laura.
Yeah, you just have core and intensive on here as an example, right? Because we don't have core and intensive services anymore.
Yeah, these are bad. This is bad data in here.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, the developers just threw some data in there, and we haven't got it all. The service matrix and all that kind of stuff. We haven't got that all linked up correctly yet in the test data. We'll have that before people actually get into it and get their hands dirty. Okay, so that is all saved. And then I'm going to get rid of this if I can. Sorry, I got this thing in front of me. Was it chat? Was it no? Not chat. It was participants. No, I don't know what it is. Anyway, so then I got back to this point of view. I'm having trouble here. Sorry, you probably don't even know it. Now we're in the view mode. I'm going to go back to location. I'm going to come back into this one I just did. Right here. Okay, this is view mode, but in view mode, I can see all of these, and maybe this is where we were. And then I can also, in a view mode only, see what's selected. Okay. And this one here, I'm gonna see if this one works. There you go. That's kind of the way that other one's supposed to work. In other words, it will just show you what is configured for that relationship only, or you can see what's configurable for that relationship that's not checked. So those, you have those two capabilities. Okay. What, Roy, was I here when you had the question, or was it one step back? I think it was one step back.
I think
Actually.
it was,
I think
yeah.
it was here. I think it was here.
There
Okay,
it is.
yeah.
Oh, wait. Yes, sorry. There. I
All
was
right.
looking for. So Covenant 24-01 is that's the same
Relationship ID.
relationship ID as the one below it, right? They don't belong to different LWIAs or anything. That's all.
Yes,
one.
that's correct. And what? Okay, so good point. Go ahead and ask your question.
And so, oh no, I'm sorry. So then so the funding, then it'll say, the different, types of funding. So that's, I do like that, but my question is, and again, maybe I'm wrapping my head too much around out of habit, the current IWDS, but currently in IWDS, when you search an entity and then or location and then get the location, and when you click on the menu in IWDS that says list relationships, it's I was just going to say, like, there could be a lot of I guess this is kind of similar. I just didn't know if you'll be able to see the LWIA number and see all the relationships, or is this only showing the relationships with this entity that my LWIA has? Because to break it down for each, gosh, I'm sorry, I should have snagged a screenshot and just put it up in the.
No, I should
of IWDS because
I might have to bring that up for us, but and I can bring that up. But
yeah, because I mean, as
so
long as
you have basically
about.
when you go into location today, if I remember right, then you go back to the left and say I want to see relationships. There's a link on the left menu that says relationships, and you go back into there. Actually, you may still have to go through the entity search and all that, but eventually you're going to get to a location. You're going to select it, and you're going to see the relationships, right?
Okay, yeah, because
and now those relationships will be like that. Now, let me tell you a little bit of something about this because this may be a little bit confusing, and this is the way we put it in this list. Sorry about these are not aligned yet, but we will.
No, that's okay. I could tell they were.
But anyway, but we'll get that. But I'm just saying, what I want to show you something in here that's a little different is, okay, first of all, this is where I was saying somebody started the configuration and they didn't finish it yet. That's okay. Okay. The second one, for example, you'll say, wait a minute, this relationship ID, and these are stupid relationship IDs, but it's over and over. Why is that? It's because it doesn't have to be. It could be like this. Okay, what's the difference? What's the difference, right?
Yes, that's more, I think.
Right. This is
one
that has all these different funding sources on it. Okay, this is an example. Because in this grid, because all these funding sources for this relationship ID were all configured with the exact same date, we just throw them into this grid together. Okay. Now, if you remember on your screen, you'll have a relationship ID, and then you'll have all the fund sources down on the left side, each of them with their own date, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's similar to this page, except for this view only, but except if you put different dates on fund sources, we put them in different rows. If you put the same date on the fund source, we just grouped them into the same row. But when you get to that, when you edit this, you have pretty much this very similar view. Okay. Mm-hmm. You have each one, right? And then you have all the information. Now we're just at a display level because we don't throw you into edit mode ever without you intentionally getting into edit mode. So now I say, yeah, this is the one I want to work with. That's fine. I don't need to deal with that. But here I can do all my editing if I want. Okay. And I can change the dates or the contract amount on any of these from a fund source level only if I want. And I can also change, if I had all the data in, change the service levels and services selected for any of those also. Okay. So, so even though you saw that kind of grouped together, let me see if I can get out of here real quick. Even though you saw those, let me go, this is a relationship, they're not grouped, but from this location perspective, when we try to show you all the relationships you have
Right.
defined at that location, even though we put those together like that, you can still configure, when you get into there, you can still configure each one fund source specifically if you want. And if you did put any of those dates separate, then we throw them out here into a different, right there. Into
I might, yeah,
on,
I might have been getting confused with like, when you're in the entity screens, you look at all the relationships for all the locations, you know, some of the areas may have this, some may not, but you know, like up here, like College DuPage or Harper College, you know, you could have multiple LWIAs that have multiple, relationship IDs. So what I was saying is like, if it's going to list, in this row, relationship ID and then funding, those two columns, if it's going to list, I mean, I like what you've done. I'm just saying it could be, you know, a real, like College page, for example, has like 5 pages of relationship, like we're currently in IWDS, of relationship,
oh
of
yeah,
list relationship
right.
ID. So, and that's not even doing this. That's not breaking them out individually, like the same relationship
Correct.
ID. And Covenant 24-01, that's actually, that's not, that's actually a good relationship number. It made sense to me. You were saying that's logical. I like that one, but I'm just saying it's, if it's the same relationship ID, and it's going to list it individually, each, each title or fund source. Again, it's just that, there, you
Might be
know,
a lot.
I
You're
didn't know
saying
if
might be a
covenants,
lot.
like, yeah, and I didn't know if there's, and again, I'm sorry, it could be because I'm getting confused with like 2 different pages of 2 different functions, but, the relationship ID, would there be that's why I was asking if this is just ours. When we go into this, will we see only our relationship numbers that we've created, or like an IWDS? There's a way at the very top level, you can click on list relationships, and it'll show you all the relationships that all LWIAs have with that entity, with the provider. So is there a
Yeah, we don't. This was idea here was just this location and just this LWIA.
Oh, okay,
We
that's what was throwing
yeah
me off. I'm sorry, because I'm
yeah
like, wow,
yeah.
if you put in the column
Usually,
with the
yeah,
LWIA numbers, and you
definitely
have every LWIA's relationship number showing every
no
title, like that would be
yeah
great because it's very, very detailed. You could get right to where you
yeah
want, but it would be an
right.
exhaustive list. So my apologies. That's okay.
No, that's okay.
That's what I was kind of thinking. I was like, oh
But
wait,
this is good feedback. This is good feedback. So the question I would have is, would it be useful if for this location, right? Let's still talk about location only. For this location within this entity, if we had an LWIA column defaulted to just your LWIA and gave you the ability to, filter that to a different LWIA or all.
I would, defer to
Is that
everybody
important thing?
else's.
Because, okay,
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would defer to, what everybody else, like a survey, what everybody else would like. I was gonna say in IWDS, that's, some of the lists when you pull it up, it's like, oh, I wish I had one more column for this or that. But that's one of the things that I kind of like, maybe just because I'm so used to it, but I like the way that you can, maybe not on this exact screen you're showing us here, but that we would have a screen or a page where we could list the relationships, by LWIA number, so that we can just see, oh, I wonder if if they've worked with this, if it's a provider you haven't worked with yet, and it's like, oh, I wonder which LWIAs have worked with this school. Maybe I'll ask them, hey, do they have good outcomes? That kind of thing. So if there was a way to add it to, if there's going to be a page or a screen where we could see a list of all the relationship numbers for that location, that entity's location. And then and then by LWIA, so we can see, that would be, it doesn't necessarily be on this screen or in this, this function in particular, but that would be good. But I would defer to everyone else.
Okay.
And Al, we do have some more questions. We have Christy had her hand up first.
Okay.
I think this is maybe what Rory was talking about. I'm just like, because LWIA 7 shares some schools with their LWIA like microtrain. Like, so we'll be able to pick that from the screen, or this is not the right screen, or we're not
No,
there.
no, that's a good point, right? We haven't addressed that to be able to switch to a different LWIA while we're down in at the location or entity level. Okay.
But maybe I'm not in the right, maybe there's another screen, so I'm just
Well,
trying to like, okay.
yeah. So if
Because
we
we
were
do
back
share schools, like
here,
we have.
so if we were, yeah, if we were back here, right,
Uh-huh.
we could pick, but I like what you got, where you guys are all going. Okay, we could pick a different LWIA, and if that entity was in a different, associated with different LWIA, and that location was, it would still come up in this list, and then you would be, now I would be with, a different LWIA. Right now we don't have that capability, but I mean, we don't have it developed yet, but this would say something different. So if I went over here, right, and I picked, whoops, I'm sorry, a different LWIA, okay, and see, we don't have anything actually data-wise in there, but if I did that, then if that entity was in that other LWIA association also, then you'd be going in that context. You'd be going down into that entity and the location in that context. But I really like what you just said, which is where can I switch and look from a different perspective? Right now, I just wish I had some good data in here to show you that, and I'm going to do that before I do this again. But here I got one location here, right? So here, I'm in this perspective of, and it should say it right here, but I'm in this LWIA 20, for example. But what about if I wanted to switch to, 7, right? Right here, not have to go back up to do that. Or even if I was here at the locations, the location screen, which is on here, if I was here at the entity screen and that's multiple locations, right? Or I was down at the relationships down in here, could I switch to a different LWIA? I think that's a good idea. The way you guys are talking, yeah. So I'll put that on the list.
And then we
All right.
have one more question from Crystal.
Well, actually, what you were just talking about made me think of something else, but
Okay.
the first thing I wanted to say about this screen right here, is what's coming up the default arranged by some, like, is it going to come up in order of the relationship ID number, or could it be arranged so that the relationship end date that was the furthest out is the one that shows up at the top of the list?
Yeah. Yes and yes. Whatever that ask is. We don't have the sorts on here yet. Those are here yet to come, but we can default that to LIFO, or last in, first out list, first in the list, or we can do it, just by date, or we can do it by relationship ID. I think you're going to want it by date, by start or end date, and probably in reverse order. But yes, we can do that. We haven't got that in here yet, but
Okay,
there's
because
two things missing here. One is the little sorts, and the second one is whatever default sort you want.
okay,
So what would be that? This is the perfect time to talk about that. What would be the best
well,
consensual here?
I
best
can
sort?
I can tell you, just based on a situation I had come up just yesterday, for example, that
Okay.
I went in and I was activating a relationship for a provider that we share, but is not housed, like their main location is not our LWA. So we don't use them regularly, but we do use them on occasion. And to get to them, you have to be able to see other LWA stuff, basically, so that you can establish a relationship with them. And then once they're historically in the system, then you can either activate or deactivate, make them inactive if you're not using them that particular year for whatever reason. But they're there so that you don't have to go in and put the whole thing in again. You can just reactivate it. One of the things that I was thinking about as I was doing that was that in the list, because it's historical data in the relationship list, I always have to go looking through the list to find the relationship that has the most recent end date, because that's the one that I want to update to keep it going, you know, year to year. And if you've got all this historical data in there, and in IWDS currently, when you get in there and look, it's just in the order that you put them in. And you have to go searching through the list to find the one that you want to update to extend the end dates to like the next June 30th, 2025 or 2026, whatever it is. So that's the first thing that I notice about it, is I'm always looking for that end date so that I make sure I get the right relationship number if you've got a whole bunch of historical data in there.
Yeah, but Al, we're not programming this like IWDS. Please tell me we're not.
As in what way?
Crystal will not have that problem, correct?
Right. So I'm saying we'll have a default sort, which is, you know, kind of everybody's agreement of what the default sort should be when we get in here. And it sounds like we might be end date in reverse chronological order. So the latest end date first is our default. And then we're going to have like we have in other places, we're going to have the reverse sort forward icon here. So you can just touch it and sort it. So if I'm like, that wasn't very good, that didn't get me where I wanted. So that's the first two things we're going to have here. We're going to have an LWIA. Go ahead.
Aren't we doing a naming convention on the relationship ID? You know, that's like one of the things.
Yeah, it's still hanging out.
Heartburn is that whole relationship.
I know it's hanging out there. We've got that. We've asked that question several times. We haven't got a definitive answer on it yet, but we certainly would like. I think everybody agrees that if we propose something, that would be better to start at that than it would be to say, hey, what's everybody?
Other than like this mess of numbers that I'm looking at on IWDS right now that have no rhyme or reason on the screenshot that Rory put in the chat.
Yep. I've got a whole list of those too.
Maybe sorting by the most recent current end date, and then actually, well, I guess this would probably negate that the need to have, but like an active or inactive, like only put the active ones first for that, you know, that relationship. Right. So like kind of along with what Crystal was saying, you know, that you're kind of scrolling through. But I guess if the end date is in the past, you would kind of, well, I think know whether it's active or inactive, but maybe not. But
right.
That was
or active, inactive is set on date, right? Just make sure of that. I would hope so. It's based on.
Yeah, it could be that they haven't renewed. The LWIA hasn't extended it just yet, so it could be a few weeks after that end date, and it could still be active. I guess it just, I wouldn't necessarily say it's always inactive if the end date, you know, was like June 30, 2024. It doesn't necessarily mean it's inactive. It could mean that just, you know, we just slipped our minds here. You know, like maybe we just hadn't enrolled anybody at that school in a couple months, and we realized, oh yeah, we got to extend the end date, so that provides, you know, so we got to extend our relationship another years.
Yeah, because we just
for that title, like maybe we're using one title and we haven't enrolled anybody.
Well, when I get a moment, I want to chime in on this conversation because I noticed there's only a few people really talking about it. I think y'all doing something in a long way. Y'all overkill it. When you start putting up, you're talking about end date, it's for those active providers. I mean, it's very easy to go in there, change the end date. This thing is not hard. I like the idea where you don't have to show that the active one is not active. But if it's active, it doesn't matter changing the end date from 6/30/2024 to 6/30/2025. You're talking about 10, 15 seconds to go into the system and do that. This thing is not hard to do. Now, another thing I like to bring up is everybody is talking about this, but what happened when a provider got some problem and we need to shut it down? Is there going to be something on the system where we can notify everybody who is using this provider to kind of shut it down and not accept no ITA for that provider? Al?
Okay, you're saying a provider, completely a provider, and you're saying at an entity level. Let me make sure I get this right. You want to inactivate really an entity all at once.
Not really. And well, this is the problem. Say we had a provider, and Rory had one just the other day as well, where they was doing some not so good stuff. Mine on my end had a federal lien. Once you have a federal lien, you could not really be paying that provides the NEITA, because that's WIO is federal money. So they might get away with one, but we try not to make it a habit of getting more than one, because we don't know until our the finance department told us, hey, we was reported that this school have a federal lien on it. So right there, I shut it down completely and notified DTO to, inform the rest of the local areas, whoever using it, do not send no participant to that school until they take care of their federal lien against them. Now, what I'm trying to say is, how can we notify and let people know, hold up, there's a problem with this school? Would there be like a drop down if they say federal lien, classes is not being completed?
All right, so it sounds like before we go pick some more information on this, it sounds like that at this entity level, okay, that we need active and inactive capability, or in other words, changing an active date or making them inactive, and a reason, right? A reason why they are inactive. Could be just they're inactive, or it could be
right.
It sounds like we need to come from here, which is the entity level. Go to edit and have an active, inactive.
It sounds like currently, if there's a program
capability
in IWDS, and hopefully actually we'll add a little bit more to this in the new system, but there is a Dropbox, but you have to go into the individual training programs for that provider. And so you can, when you select the status, there's like approved, accept, rejected, pending initial, pending recertification. So if you put suspended, there is a Dropbox that says for cause. It would be nice to have.
No, that's not. That's again.
That's at the training program level, right?
Exactly. Well, let me finish. Exactly. But what I think we're saying is that could you put it at maybe an entity level? That I'm just saying, using something like that and putting it in the entity level.
You're giving an example of
program.
I think you're doing it at the entity. I'm talking about just shutting down from a provider level. Period. See what you're doing? That's actual work. We don't need to shut down the program. I want to make that provider inactive, because in IWDS you got active or inactive. Once I make them inactive, guess what? All of those stuff is stopped completely.
Okay. Right. I'm using the programmatic example as the way we have to go into every individual program and do that, which is I think should still be an option. I think it should still be an option, because some schools just may have programs you want to reject, but not the entire entity. But I'm just saying about at the entity level, yes, to put something like that in the entity screen. It's like you can suspend an entity and then for cause and then put a reason. I'm just saying, take that out of the program.
Okay.
Yeah, I get it for the training program. I get it. Yes, I get it for the training program. Yes, you have to do it that way. But when a provider is doing some illegal stuff, I ain't got time to be worrying about their training program. You doing some illegal stuff, I'm shutting you down. Point blank.
That's fine.
Period.
That's fine. I get it. Okay. Now let me ask one more question. Do we also want to do it at the location level? So you could, if you do it at the entity level, right, it supersedes everything. If you do it at the location level, it could supersede everything at that location. And obviously granularity is relationships and training programs, right?
And so I'll say yes, Al. To the location level. And I know the reason I'm saying yes is more of a training program reason rather than like a service side. But yeah, I would think, because you could have a location that's bad, but the provider's not.
All right. So we're going to
ADA accessible or something.
Good. Yeah, that's what I thought too. That's the first thing I thought of. Or you found out something about that location.
Okay, what happened when there's a federal lien on that provider? Period.
Well, then they have 6, 7 different, 8 different locations. You got to shut them all down.
Right. You want to do it at the entity level.
Right? Yeah, but what you're saying now is you can do it at both levels, right? You could either shut the whole damn thing down, or you could just shut the location down.
Right. So yeah, we're saying we can do it at any level. I just want to make sure. So we can do it at the entity level, or we can do it at a location level. Well, obviously we can do it at the relationship level, because you can do that, or we can do it at the training program level. So that's we can do it at actually 4 different levels. And that's what we'll put
Yeah,
in
that'd
here.
be
So you
good.
can, and
That'd be great.
with a reason, we'll track that reason also. So this was ended or suspended or however you want to call it, but we did this at this point. Here's the reason, and we could even add note capability if you want that too. All right, good information. Because those are kind of hidden right now, those active, inactive periods. Everything we have in the database has inactive and active periods, but that's kind of hidden from you. And we need to get that up to the forefront so you can manually adjust that. Okay.
I normally make my providers inactive if I see no service for at least 3 to 4 years. I then change them from active to inactive to get them off the list. So now if they come back and they want to get active, then I reactivate them. I don't like to have all my training providers, and the state got over 7,000. If these places is not doing anything for 3, 4, 5 years, there should be no reason, no LW, no local area should have them active, period. They should be shut down or put as inactive. So we should have a mechanism where after a certain time period, we can decide what would be a good time period. Hey, these things going to automatically be inactive by default because no service has been provided to this. No participant, nobody been there, and they're just there. And we shouldn't just keep these things open in limbo for years and years and years. No, I don't like that. I think it's bad management as far as reviewing our providers and stuff.
Yeah, Robert. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought you were done, Robert.
Yeah, I'm gonna hear what everybody else has to say.
What I was going to say is a couple things. Maybe I'm not understanding the word inactive you're using, because if a provider is provided eligibility, whether it be initial for 1 year or continued for 2, they get that eligibility for the whole 2 years. And if there's at a point where it feels like that provider is no longer providing, or a program specifically is no longer providing value, then when it comes up for eligibility next time, that's when you could say, we're not providing eligibility because it's not being used. But inactive wouldn't be right, because you can't stop somebody's eligibility in the middle of their eligibility period. So I hope that's not what you meant. I just wanted to clarify.
No, I think you read them because you say something about, you're talking about eligibility. No, I'm talking about my provider. Let's say we have a provider. Let's say everybody got microtrain. Okay, let's say for instance, they haven't sent nobody there for 3, 4 years, and they haven't even upgrade, recertify the program. Now that's a problem where, okay, we can shut it down because nobody, it's up to the provider to update their stuff either every 2 years or every 3 years once that training program is pending recertification.
Yeah,
what I'm saying is there's some other, if you take time out and you pull up that list, you will see some providers that they're showing active, and really they're just there in limbo. Those are the ones we can't keep on having them active. They shut down a lot for our local area because we wasn't doing nothing for 3, 4, 5. Some of them even was 10 years.
Right, and when we do some future training, we're going to talk about that, because DOL pointed out states that had excessive numbers of programs, and we were at the highest top of the list. And then when we looked at it, half the programs hadn't been used in over 3 years. So it's something.
Absolutely.
We got to have a discussion on it though, and see what the right parameters might be and incorporate it into policy. We can't just be randomly choosing who stays or doesn't. But anyway, it's an issue at DOL level, so we understand and appreciate your concern for that. We also have to just make sure we provide adequate opportunities, because the act says that too. So fine balance we have to look at.
I think to add to what Mark was saying, there is such a thing as staff turnover. And just because I've been managing provider, stuff for the last 10 years doesn't mean that somebody else on staff has been trained in it or knows the provider side of the current IWDS well enough to understand active versus inactive, relationship ID numbers, starting and end dates. We had someone who left And, you know, there wasn't anybody else who realized that the end dates for relationships needed to be extended until all of a sudden a frontline staff person goes in to put in a service record and the provider you've been using for years doesn't show up, you know? I mean, so the thing about that is that in IWDS currently, there isn't a way to describe what things are, so that if a new person comes in or they're receiving training or whatever, unless you have the historical information by a current staff person, they're lost. So if we're going to improve the system for IWDS 2.0, I've heard at other parts of this that there would be definitions and explanations and things like that, and not to overburden anything, but to just face the reality that when there is staff turnover, there needs to be some sort of glossary or something that explains what's happening in there, so that someone who is new can come in and see, you know, oh, I've been assigned this task. Oh, this explains it. Do you know what I'm saying? And that kind of gets at that whole idea of Mark saying that there are certain things that we have to adhere to that maybe not everybody does because they're just not familiar with that part of the system or what they ought to be doing, because there's no definitions in there to tell them so.
Yes, I do understand what you're saying. Now, you said two things, though. I just want to make sure I just dissect this correctly. You said one is kind of a historical information, okay, and one is probably more of, so I is more of a system-wide info. Why are we doing this kind of a thing? But I think what you're talking about is, on the first one, is because you have quite a bit of flexibility in this relationship area. Let's just talk this relationship area, because I think that's where we have a lot of flexibility. And because you can set these relationships up very differently from LWIA to WIA, we have person to person. Whoever sets them up can set them up differently. You could have them set up and divided up into, you know, literally down to fund level, or you could go up and group those together and have a bunch of funds under each one. So there's a lot of different ways you can set up relationships, program wise and everything else. So what you're saying, if I think I hear you right, is, you know, why did they set up this relationship this way? And how should I use it going forward? Should I use it or not? Okay. I think that's more what you're saying. I don't have a good answer unless you think we should have comments saved with, you know, notes saved, savable notes with relationships. We could do that. We can add notes anywhere you want. If you think we should do that, we could add notes. Like if we were in here and somebody sets up a relationship. Now, obviously those are optional things. And so whenever optional things are provided for you, it doesn't mean operational wise, you know, standard procedure wise that people are going to do it. But we could provide that real easily if you think that's important, to have a description area to add notes to a relationship. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't think there's anything wrong with having notes in different places, but what I was talking about more is like, if you, because this just happened, you know, a couple weeks ago, we had someone retire who was primarily responsible for a certain function in IWDS.
Mm-hmm.
That function is not explained anywhere in any sort of companion glossary or explanation of how things work in IWDS.
Oh, okay, that's easier.
You know, yeah, I mean, so then when that happens, then you have things happen like places staying active when they should really be inactive from a provider standpoint, or you have relationship ID or, you know, information that isn't consistent from year to year because there's nothing there that explains what it's supposed to, you know what I'm saying? It is it infiltrates all levels of managing the data that's in your data management system. If there's not definition somewhere that explains what is supposed to happen.
All right, let me give you a little peek here of something you're not seeing yet because it's not in here yet. But we've just had a discussion with Lisa and myself and John and some other folks just had some discussion about this topic of procedural information, system information. In other words, where do I get help? Where do I understand what and how we're using the system and what the procedures are behind it and even the policy? So one of the things you're not seeing in this, we're going to have a lot of info float overs. So like, for example, we would have one if we decide to do a standard relationship ID, for example, and we get that done, there'll probably be a little I here that says, hey, this is a description of what this relationship ID is and how it's used in the system. Or relationship type, what does it mean to be referral or contract or vendor? What's the difference between contract and vendor? You know, we're going to have, that's one thing we're going to have. Number two is up here at the right, I'm not for sure where it's going to be, but we're going to have a help menu that will provide you with 3 different types, I believe, for sure. One is what is the help? What is this page about? You know, what are you seeing? How do you use this page? How you know, what are the rules behind the validation? What can you do and not do on this page? Those kind of things. That's kind of a standard user system help level. Then the second one will be a reference to a link to other resources about policy or resources about standard operating procedures and more of why would you even get to this screen. And then the third one we're going to have is a link to an learning management system where you can say, if you want, you know, actual coursework or actual curriculum based on this, go here and you'll be able to find that. So I just wanted to tell you, you don't see it yet, but it is going to be here. It's, you know, we're just, you know, we're layering that onion, we're adding pieces as we go, and we're just getting into the thought and the development and the planning of all that information and resources that we want to put at your fingertips.
I think that is fantastic. And I figured there was going to be, I mean, we talked before about there being like info bubbles on different things, but
Yep.
what you're talking about takes it to that next level, because there are some parts of the current IWDS that are really good with explanation, you know, if you're getting into performance measures and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And some of the reporting has it, some of them don't. But for the actual process of procedure of things, there's not really anything like that in there, and that would be super helpful. So I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
You bet. That's the it's like a double-edged sword, right? The ability for you all to get to see things at an early stage, a very early stage. Sometimes we, you know, it's a scratch on a piece of paper, right? More or less. That side versus seeing the complete product and anticipating and like, wait a minute, why isn't this complete? You know, that's kind of our double-edged sword, but we definitely want to keep you in at this level, keep you in at the level of requirements and keep you right there, because the more we can get this system to be a more usable system and a better system for you earlier than later will be a big help for us, because redo is no fun. Right? We want to make sure we're hitting these things out the gate. Okay. All right. Any other questions we have here? I'm going to look at chat real quick. That would be specifically about, you know, what I'm showing you in relationships here. This was I think Rory, you must have threw this up here. You can't see it, but I just double clicked on your chat here. Yeah. And you have the LWIA there, and you've gone all the way down to the entity and probably the location level, it looks like, and then you see all the relationships for that location and the LWIAs that are associated with those. So okay. So we're definitely, my takeaways here today on this, because I don't have a whole lot more on this, but my takeaways are, let me get back to this relationship grid. We're going to make this better for sure. Obviously, I already told you we're going to have these sorting capabilities. We're going to default sort to end date, reverse chronological order, and we're going to provide you with an LWIA filtering capability, so that, and we'll default to the current LWIA that you logged in with. Otherwise, we'll probably default that sort from a state perspective or whatever to LWIA order or something like that. But those are the three takeaways I have there on my list.
But quick question now. Quick
Yeah.
question. But when you sign in, shouldn't it default to that local area
Yes.
by default, and then
Yes.
everything else follow behind?
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
Okay.
That's why that's the only view you're seeing right now. We're defaulted to LWIA 20, but LWIA 20 is not got anything to do with this data, so don't get that wrong. But we're defaulting to an LWIA today, and that's the way it will be. You'll default to an LWIA, but we want some places where you can see what's going on, especially in this relationship area, location area, those kinds of things, with other LWIA associations. Okay. So we want that capability, and I'll get that. And then the last thing I have on action items is, which is great information, is we want the ability to, in a sense, inactivate with a reason and maybe even some notes around that inactivation action from an entity level, entity location level. So your provider location, and then all the way, obviously, relationship you already have. And then, of course, when you see training program, which is to come, we haven't got that, you'll see it at that level too. So we'll make sure that's all the way through. Now, I do have one question about that was a little surprising. Somebody said, and I just want to make sure I understand this, because I thought I heard that someone was changing the dates on a relationship that was in a different LWIA, and I was a little bit surprised to hear that. Can somebody come back on that?
I don't think that could happen. I think somebody got that by mistake. The only way that could happen is that person is working at both locations.
Well, hold on. Yeah,
No, that's not.
Let's
you
listen
might be
to 7. Go ahead.
You might be referring to the comment that I made, and I think you misunderstood me.
Okay,
I said that I was going into a provider relationship that we had existing with someone, a provider who is not, their main location is not in our geographic area. So therefore we don't quote unquote own them.
Right.
And I was going into, we had somebody who wanted to use a training program we hadn't used for a while, and they got approval to do so. And so I went into our existing relationship with this particular provider, and I had to look through the list in order to find the one that was the most current. And it was like, I don't know, 5 years old or something like that. And then I went in and I updated our end date for that title. I think it was 1A for that particular provider. So I think that was where maybe the confusion came in, that that you have in your own LWA, you have your providers that you work with all the time. And then you also share providers with other places, and you don't modify their relationship numbers, but you modify yours with that out of area provider. And sometimes the historical data, like in this particular case, it's someone we have worked with before, but we hadn't worked, we hadn't sent anybody under this particular title to this provider in 4 or 5 years. So I went in and found I didn't want to put in a whole bunch of new stuff. I just wanted to go in and extend the date for 1A for this provider so that they could do service records.
Okay.
So I think that spoke to what everybody else was saying, is that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And you want to be able to get to other providers to make sure that they're in the system somewhere, and then you can establish a relationship with them, and you don't put them in because they're not in your LWA, because there's that, geographic location for their main, there's all that policy and everything. So that's what I was talking about. I think people misunderstood what I was saying.
Okay. No, thank you very much. That's why I restated it. Okay, I think that is all I have today. And I don't think anyone, unless we've came up with something since I've been blabbing. Taylor, Lynette, Danny, we don't have any other agenda for today.
Nope, I think we're good.
Nope.
Well, thank you, folks. Give you some time back. I appreciate all your input. It's great that we will definitely not slack on this. We'll keep this up because even when we don't think there's much to provide you with, you guys come up with some great ideas, and I appreciate that. Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks,
All
everyone.
right, thank you. You have a great day too.